Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Judkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman and Jake Cornblue. Happy to be back. How are you guys doing?
Good. Excited to have the crew back together, and should be a really fun show tonight with a bunch of Discord questions. So yeah, I'm excited for it. What's going on, Jake?
Honestly, battling a slight migraine, so I've changed my name to Land Larison. Kept it from last week. Let's just get the show on the road.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so tonight will be mostly just mailbag questions from our amazing Discord. Jake was able to reach out and get some questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. But I guess before that, last week, Jake and Billy talked a little bit about Scott Fishbowl and wanted me to check in. Not sure exactly if I have any really great takeaways, but I did like the way mine started. I was able to snag Jaden Daniels at 112, which is a little bit later than I saw him in a lot of mocks.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brock Bowers, the follow-up, is also a little bit later than I've seen in other mocks. And then after that, I just kind of went by vibes. What I've noticed a lot is running back heavy. I mean, I have a block here where you have three owners in a row took with the first four picks running backs. So it's just like this block of
yeah.
But nothing too crazy, man. I mean, honestly, just kind of drafting by vibes, going by projected points for the year, and not necessarily any type of build. It's really just like a pick your player, choose your path type of deal. Like literally no strategy except for trying to draft the people who are going to make the most points. So finished up, with a Goff and JMO stack later on in the 6th and the 7th, drafting from the 12th spot. Me personally, I only have two running backs after 11 rounds, and that would be James Conner and Cam Skatabo. It's going slow, but we're about halfway done.
It's a good place to be. I feel like it sounds like it's one of these drafts, and I think maybe this wasn't the idea, but it feels like it was the idea, where no two drafts are even remotely the same. Like I've seen, I think 5 or 6 different boards, and they're all fucking whacked out in their own ways, and giving everyone the opportunity to kind of build however they want has now also forced all the different draft boards to be directed and misguided and impacted by different strategies that I think also impacts the people that you're drafting with. So, in fairness to you, it sounds like you have a very unique build that is drastically different than mine, and is drastically different than Billy's, and is drastically different than several other people that I've seen. And I don't think that means that there's a right path. I think it's just going to make it even more chaotic when we start looking at like week 7, week 8 scoring and trying to compare what the, top 500, 1,000 teams look like, trying to get into that cutoff. And we're all going to be like, maybe, that strategy didn't work, or maybe this strategy was more profitable, or maybe that guy who was streaming quarterbacks is actually the one who's doing the best job. Like, it's going to be really unique to see what type of work was put into that roster construction to see where it got to. But I really do like the way that you've maneuvered through your build. I love going onto Twitter very randomly and seeing your like every few day updates, and I'm like, damn, some really nice value added in the last couple of days. Good for that guy. Also loved that going into the weekend, you were camping and knew that was going to be like a potential heartache to your potential drafting capabilities, and then you ended up having service, which is genuinely hilarious. So it seems like your team came out as well as it could, given that you actually have service.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked with it. It's actually kind of a good thing because I set up a queue like a couple days before, or the day before I was leaving, and I don't think any of the guys that I chose would probably actually have been there for my pick. So
That's so funny.
I got pretty lucky there. So oh no, it's just a really fun experience because it's all flex everything, right? So you just kind of choose your fighter, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that does vibe with the way we play, right? With all the flex spots and everything like that. So I do enjoy that piece of this year. But yeah, you had a great start there, man. I love the 1 and 2 pick there. The Daniels and Bowers picks, and then. But it'll be interesting. Like I've seen a ton of people go, wide receiver heavy. You're going obviously kind of just more balanced, and not really going headfirst into the running back, is going to win this thing value. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of at the end of the day, like what really does, matter in this the scoring setting. So yeah, it's always fun. Always a fun tournament trying to beat 3,000, 4,000 people, whatever it is now.
I did want to just really quickly on this one section shout out a super unique build that I saw in the Superflex Super Show Discord. And I won't shout out who the person is just because I don't think that they're in our Discord. But either way, at the 105, they went Bowers. At the 208, they went JT. 308, they go Kittle, Laporta, Hawkinson, Caleb Johnson, David Montgomery, Tyrone Tracy, Loveland, Kincaid, and Mason. So they are basically owning the majority of the high-end tight end room, which I think is a really, really unique way to impact the individual league. And it'll be really interesting to see how that translates into potential wins throughout the season and what that actually impacts. So that's through 11 rounds, no quarterbacks and no wide receivers, just running backs and tight ends. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's something to a build like that, but I do think you need to be slightly more balanced to like actually make it work. Because like I don't know if at the end of the day you're going to have the horses at the quarterback position more than anything. Obviously, it's all flex, so like you can do it if you have top end guys everywhere else. But just one thing that stands out in general from that, and just anecdotally, like Caleb Johnson in general and redraft, like best ball. He seems like he's undervalued. Yeah, what's funny, like he does seem undervalued compared to like
careful.
Typically I would say something negative, but what's funny is that like I've been in all these drafts and I'm like, holy shit, like he's still there and he's like far past like where all these other running backs, these rookie running backs are going, and he's just in such a solid situation. Like obviously I can see a world where Jalen Warren is kind of leading things, but I don't really believe that's the world we're going to be living in. So I just feel like, we're undervaluing him from that perspective. So I don't know if that leaks over into Dynasty at all. Just something I noticed from being in some of these drafts recently.
Cool.
And like I got him in my draft, my SFB draft. Sorry, I got him in mine at the 7-11. So,
wow.
Yeah.
7-11.
Yeah, after David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, Swift, like those kind of running backs. After Cortland Sutton, Metcalf, Addison, Worthy, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Went 6-5 in mine.
yeah, but again, so like I guess I'm definitely seeing maybe an exaggerated version of it, but even in a couple dynasty leagues where I have him, he's not as highly valued as I thought he would be given situation and all that stuff. So
he will be
right. So maybe maybe it's leaking over into Dynasty a little bit, and you may be able to get him at a value now, and then you can sell him if you don't really like him. Maybe again, it's probably in the margins here, but anyway, noticeable.
Yeah, he went 6-3 in mine. I had to look it up. Sorry for the delay, but yeah, he went 6-3 in mine. But yeah, that's interesting.
We can move on. Sorry, just noticed it.
Oh, good. All right, so let's hop into the mailbag from the Discord. Should be pretty fun here. So, all right, let's get some of that less dynasty-related questions out of the way. Good question, though. If you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? Shout out to Butt Liquor Extraordinaire for asking us that. And I'll just be honest. Yeah, I would, as long as ketchup was available.
Yeah. You need some type of lubricant, is what you're saying.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I don't. When I saw this question, it just immediately made me think of like Sausage Party. Like if that, like that's how you know what I mean? Like I'm now a hot dog, and so I don't think I would eat myself. It's like going cannibalism. So I'd probably say no.
If you're a processed food, though, like what is your diet?
Other processed food.
Other
not hot dogs, like buns. I don't know.
Taking
like
a standardized
shit.
test. It's like what is your ethnicity? You're like other. I am hot dog right now. Okay, yeah. I guess I have to answer this question as well because I put it on the show sheet. I would not. I would find some alternative pathway. I personally don't like hot dogs. I don't know if it's like the phallic nature of them or
Oh my
what.
god!
Oh,
but
come
I'm
That's
No, I
what-
don't
It's
know.
they're, like processed and like all like
Yeah, no,
just-
it's a textural thing. Like when it hits my lips, it's like slippery. I don't know. It's just not. It's not for me. I don't know. Do
the
you know
Freudian
what I'm
thing.
talking about? There's like a casing
mean,
on it. Like you put your.
I know what you mean, but like I don't have that same issue. I generally will just like a Costco hot dog is fire. Like you've never,
so
you
good.
know.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
they're like
All
at
beef
the
hot dog, yeah,
restaurant,
bro.
like at the restaurant aspect of Costco, or you're saying like a frozen food section Costco?
No. The restaurant,
okay.
like the
Cafe, whatever they call it.
Food
$1.50
court.
and a Pepsi, like
Food
the
court. Thank you.
Food
That's what it's
court,
called.
yeah.
Yes. Like the
Yes,
cheapest
I don't
lunch you'll
know.
ever have in your life. But
I feel like
mean,
when I
like,
talk, sometimes I'm like an
I get the
incel who
idea.
like doesn't go outside. I don't know what those things are called.
It sounds like
You're-
that sometimes.
Your eyes like a food court, and I'm like the cafe. Anyone ever been to the Costco
The cafe, man.
By the way, the swirl, the chocolate vanilla swirl ice cream there, soft serve, elite, absolutely elite. Sorry,
Oh.
Costco, just
Froyo.
they do it right. They do it.
How's
right.
the chocolate chip cookie? I feel like that went viral last year. Is it actually good?
Nah, they went viral because of the Boom Kid, right? Is that why? Like, or whatever.
Oh,
Like, those
yeah,
videos, idiots.
the little fat
We're so
Italian
off the
child.
rails right now, but the cookies aren't as good as everything else. I'll be honest. Okay.
All right, let's get into the negative news.
Back into some new. So Christian Judkins, we found out over the last few days, was
Is that a Philly
arrested.
pronunciation?
Yeah,
Christian
Judkins.
Judkins?
Judkins.
I think it's yeah. Man, I hope no one ever
He
listens
converted
to this
to
podcast
Judaism.
to
Couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself. I'm
Judkins.
sorry. Welcome to the tribe.
Yep.
God.
All right.
We just
All right.
can't call him QJ.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's completely
very fair.
fair. Or I'm fine with Judkins then. Let's keep going.
All right. Yeah. So arrested for basically domestic violence. We'll see what happens there. There's a criminal report filed by the girl, the victim. We'll see what happens. If you want really good legal updates, follow Drew Davenport on the socials. I don't know if he has a blue sky, but he does have Twitter. And he's usually one of the best when it comes to legal stuff, where he waits for the facts and then like just kind of tells it how it is. But with that, there's a comment from the Superflex Super Show Discord about the relationship between the game and all the awful things that come of the player, other league members. I would love for you to expand on that in the wake of the Christian Judkins news. So I'm taking this question as like, are you talking about whether or not you feel icky rostering guys like this? Is that
Yeah. Basically, I'll give a little bit more context. I had made a comment in the Superflex Super Show Discord about how we've become, I think, as fantasy football players, managers, too comfortable with this news time and time again. And when it continues to come up, the way in which we communicate about it and interact with our league mates, interact with each other, it's almost slightly passive instead of hitting it a little bit more on the head. And maybe that's because, you know, to Uriah's point, there's a lot of legalities based on these situations that we don't know, nor can we make those assumptions immediately. And so I think, shout out to my borough. They were really just wanting to know, like, where do we draw the line in terms of what the news is representing, what the player is representing. There are clearly some really awful people within the league themselves, like within the NFL. Like we know that they have done some pretty terrible things in the past. And how does that impact the way that we view the NFL? Do you not roster any players from that franchise, for instance? Like that was, I think, the general line of logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like kind of expanding on what you're saying there before I answer anything or just give thoughts, but like, you know, when Washington had the former owner, was it Dan Schneider? It's like, would you not,
Yep.
and everything going on around it and all the people leading that organization who were clearly, you know, not good people or doing not good things. And, you know, what are you going to not roster any Washington players? So it's like, I understand like everybody has a certain tolerance and like the question is, where is the line? I mean, the line probably for me is like, did you murder somebody? Are you actually convicted of this crime? I mean, Deshaun Watson is probably as close as you get to not being, I guess, like actually convicted of something, but knowing pretty well, like, yeah, something probably happened. You know what I mean? Where it's like, that's where the line gets really fuzzy, I think, right there, right? Where it's like, okay, are you willing to roster a guy like that? Is it worth it? Because we are playing a game where these guys are at some level chess pieces on a board, right? It's not like you're actually rostering the person and endorsing that person because he's on your team. There's a certain dynasty value associated with it that you're trying to take advantage of, for lack of a better term. So it's like, it's just a really complex thing. And so again, like for me, I feel like if you're convicted of something, or if like you, again, like Henry Ruggs, it's like we all are like, yeah, that guy doesn't need to be on my roster at all. Like, obviously I don't need to wait for him to come out of jail or anything like that. So the line is pretty well drawn there for me, I guess. But because at some level, like you do have to look at the situations like Tyreek Hill, right? Where again, I know somebody in the Discord was like, they took over a team in 2024 and immediately was like shipping off Hill and yada, yada, yada. But it's like, wind that back a couple of years. Are you just going to ship him off immediately? Because, well, you may still do that, but he's going to garner a lot more value because he just had a lot more value. You know what I mean? He bounced back, is my point, from the domestic violence situation that he had, where people did kind of sell him for nothing. I remember that point where it was like selling him for 2/3 and whatever. And then he bounced back to well over a first. So it's like, are you willing, based on, your moral stance or whatever it is, to give up that kind of potential value every time, knowing that it's, that is a possibility. For me, I feel like I said in the Discord, like most of the time I will let that go, but there's certainly been times where like I've bought into a player with some kind of issue or whatever it was, if it, was much more up in the air or something like that. But yeah, it's a really tough situation, because bringing it back to like what we're talking about here with Judkins, and I'll pass it off here in a second. Obviously you don't want to endorse any behavior like that. Yeah. Jake, ready to receive. Jeez, that's a line. But on the Judkins thing, I mean, obviously just like be better people, better humans, treat everybody better, especially women in your life. But yeah, you don't want to endorse anybody like that. So it's definitely a tough situation, but this is something I could totally see him bouncing back from, and not wanting to sell him for just peanuts because I don't like the guy now. Like, I don't know if I would do that either if I roster any Judkins. Fortunately, I don't, so I don't have to make any of those decisions. But if I did, I don't know if I would just dish him off for a second right now. You know what I mean? Or whatever, or package him. I'm not sure. How do you guys feel about it?
Oh, I thought you were saying Penix, because that's how you pronounce Penix. Sorry. Anyway.
Peanuts.
Fair enough. Unfortunately. Yes. Yeah. I'll hop in. I do feel like this question was a little bit directed directly at me because I made a comment, and so I feel like I should at least explain myself. I do think that a lot of what we do is haphazard. It's not thought out. It also lacks social commentary, and especially us being a little bit more socially facing, publicly facing when we provide these opinions. I think we should have slightly stronger opinions about things that matter. And the things that matter, in my perspective, are going to be the way in which we impact other people around us. That doesn't mean my own decisions. That means the people in which we're playing this game with. That could be players that we roster. That could be players that are in our own leagues. It could be people within the sport. All that to say, I do think that we need to be more critical of ourselves as well when we communicate about these issues. And a lot of what we do, I'm talking about predominantly men, white males. That's unfortunately the giant demographic of fantasy football. I don't think we do enough to actually support other marginalized groups within the actual space. That includes women, that includes people of other ethnic backgrounds, of other races. And so when we talk about these things, we need to be, I think, more mindful of how we speak of the victim, how we speak of the people that are involved in these cases. And that's kind of where I was driving a lot of my conversation in the Superflex Super Show Discord. Like, we're talking so much about strategy in spaces, and it's really important to talk about strategy. It's really important to take advantage of a market opportunity. I'm not saying that, but I also think that we should be in a place where we're not just, I don't know, forgetting about the basis of why this conversation is even happening, right? Like we're having this conversation because of a potential situation where one human being physically attacked another human being and caused bodily harm to them. Like that isn't something that should just be glossed over and be like, oh, well, I would trade for Quinton Judkins for a second. Like I feel like we as other people are blowing by that caveat. And I know that we're in forums intentionally to kind of get away from so much of the realities of our lives. I get that. The only thing that I was kind of presenting forward was like, when we do make these decisions, let's also be mindful of the things that we're kind of trying to acquire, the baggage that's attached to them. And so for me, I don't necessarily draw that distinct of a line from the actual like game integrity aspect, but I do draw a pretty strong line in terms of like what I'm willing to do from a like acquisition standpoint. So like if I'm going to be moving into someone like Deshaun Watson in that period of time where the allegations were out, like trying to take advantage of a market situation, like I wouldn't have found myself trying to do it for anything that wasn't like whatever market price was divided by 3. Like I wasn't going to be putting my face out there stating that like I thought that his career was going to turn around completely because of XYZ. Sure. Like that wasn't the opportunity that I saw as someone, like I said before, who's socially facing to have that impact on the market or the people that are listening to us. And so that's kind of where my mind sat. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it there and pass it over to Uriah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to know that just because you roster an NFL player on your Dynasty roster who is not a good person doesn't make you a bad person. There are probably times where if you want to be the moral high ground, which is perfectly fine, playing a game that's still fine to bring that part of you into your gameplay. And in which case, I think it'd just be best to, okay, hey, there's this guy accused of this thing, or even proven that he did this thing, which is probably better. You don't want to be too reactionary, but if you bring that with you in every phase of your life, which some people do, some people don't, depending on what it happens to be, then the best thing to do is just to pivot to an equivalent asset, and you get that asset off your roster and then feel not icky. But I just think that it is important to not shame people for rostering Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, these types of players, because we're ultimately playing a game, right? It wouldn't matter if this was a player that had been in the league a couple of years and was like mid. That'd be so much easier to be like, fuck that, pivot to somebody else. But we are dealing with like a rookie here that like a lot of people see some potential with and could really help your Dynasty team. If you do want to go the moral route and bring that into your gameplay, that's fine. But I think that as you were saying, like we play with women, marginalized groups, et cetera, that are in our leagues or are listening to our show, they may feel that if you roster a certain player that this is like you're agreeing with the actions of that player. And I just don't see it that way. I think it's really smart to kind of separate those two. But then again, it's like I don't like to really roster Eagles players. Typically, I'll try to find one that's equivalent. So it's kind of the same thing, right? So the advice would be if rostering somebody like Judkins, who probably did what he is accused of, and that makes you feel ick, I would pivot to somebody that's an equivalent value. And then you can just kind of, but I don't think we should shame people for rostering these players.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely go. Sorry, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a dumb joke. I was just gonna say, are you making the equivalent that playing for the Eagles is that of committing domestic violence.
It is that bad. It's that bad.
If they choose to play, if they sign a second contract there, yeah.
That's a terrible joke as we're talking about being sensitive to the.
I'm just saying,
no, not you.
You could pivot.
It was me. It was me.
That was Jake.
Yeah.
So I mean, no, but I mean, like, yeah, like definitely need to have that caveat in there. You know, obviously, all respect to everybody. Sometimes it's easier to laugh than cry, you know? So I think that's, you know, better too, some of this, but I do think like, I get the idea, especially from a content creation standpoint of like having to make that distinction of like, look, like this is not something that we endorse, you know, at all. And I don't think that, you know, we're out here like go and buy Judkins, like try to get him on the low.
No,
I don't think that's, you know, that would be, I don't think that would be good advice necessarily. And I also just don't think that's the right way to go about it. But also just on that like note of things, the way that we talk about the situations drives me crazy sometimes. Like I see a lot of, which you obviously agree with at some level, but it's like, he's stupid. What an idiot, like ruining this chance. And it's like, it's not stupid. Like he's abusive. Like clearly, you know what I mean? This is not being stupid. This is not being like an idiot. Like it's like, so like, cause I get the feeling that almost with these comments, it's like, if he didn't have this big career ahead of him, it would be more okay. You know what I mean? Or it wouldn't be as stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like of him to do, like, because you're just ruining this big chance. And it's like, I know that's not necessarily what is meant by it, but it's more than just like this dumb little mistake. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a problem. It's something that everybody knows is is something you shouldn't ever be doing. And so to talk about it in that way is definitely, I can see how like in a Discord where you're talking just like fantasy flippantly about it, it could be seen as really insensitive. So I think when you go into these conversations, if you just, you know, bring some sensitivity to it, some caveats, talk about it like a human, then you can actually maybe have a conversation about like what to do. And, you know, do you like Jerome Ford better? Do you like this guy better? It's like, you can definitely have a conversation about what to do next, but it's like, you got to be a little sensitive about these conversations and how you go about them. So, I mean, we can move on. We've been talking about this for quite a bit, but I think it's a great conversation. I think it's an important conversation. So I don't want to minimize any of that. And I hope any of the laughing didn't come across, you know, insensitive. That wasn't the intent at all. Anybody want to jump in before we move on?
Yeah, I was just saying, shout out to me.
Oh.
I have Dylan Sampson ranked 2 spots ahead of Judkins pre-draft. So
there you go.
There you go.
He knew. He fucking knew. He fucking knew it.
I don't think I have him ranked that way anymore, but all right, cool. Strategy and roster questions.
Soon enough.
So here's a question. Shout out to Sleebs from the Discord. Quarterback 3 strategy. Is it a good strategy to invest in a position that is largely just a backup plan, leaving all those points on your bench? Is trying to obtain the handcuffs to your starting quarterback ones a better strategy? And if so, what about the more nebulous situations like Badgett and Keenum? Or is a cheap option like Russ or rolling the dice with the use and Shuck the better play? Curious how the gang's thoughts are.
It's a good question.
When he says, sorry, just to clarify, is it a good strategy to invest in a position that is largely just a backup plan? So when you're like, is that a question to the QB3s? Like,
yes.
Specifically,
yes.
like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, when roster constructing, you have your 2 starting quarterbacks in theory. Your QB3s being literally anyone that isn't your 2 starters. So would the idea be to have handcuffs? Would the idea be to have cheap options like Russ? Or would the idea be to have your Tyler Shuggs, etc.? Or would the idea be to be a QBX strategy and go for other elite quarterbacks? Like what would be the best path?
Yeah. So
I believe
there's so many. Go ahead. You're right.
I think Billy did a little bit of work on this with the value over replacement. And basically, this doesn't sound, I mean, this is going to sound like direct, but I mean, that's kind of, it doesn't matter that much. Basically, I think for your QB3, probably what the ideal strategy is, if you're not going to go QBX where you're rostering 4 or 5 quarterbacks, I wouldn't worry about that as much and probably just go for the cheapest option. The backup idea is kind of nice, but I mean, there's not a whole lot of situations where I see the backup quarterback even replacing the level of like what your QB3 was able to because they're the backup, right? Um, I personally don't think I would want to go and roster any of my QB1, QB2s, quote unquote, handcuffed. I would try to take one of the cheaper options like a Russ, as you said here, or Justin Fields or Tyler Shook. Just one of those as just like a guy for bye weeks and that type of deal. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
God damn it! I keep
We
jumping.
both
on
said
you
yes,
guys.
though. So
Fuck me.
We agreed with you actually. That's what we were doing.
So again, like there's a lot of different directions to go with this. Like your eyes said, like with the lower end QB3s or whatever, if you're expecting them to like fill in for your quarterback, you're probably just as good getting a wide receiver or a running back or something that will, give you those same points. So like you don't need to prioritize those lower end guys at all. That's the kind of data that Uriah was referencing. But I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to having, a third really solid quarterback. Again, I'm not super concerned about the points not being utilized necessarily because they will be eventually, whether it's injury related or bye week related or something like that. So if it's, if I have another top 7, 8 kind of QB along with my other two, like, yeah, that's great news. And also it's a great trade piece. So I'm definitely not opposed to like having that on my roster. However, I guess I am like one to collect like the Jake Brownings of the world and all those different like backups. I do see some value in that. I think, again, like they're easy to drop, but I do see some value in those kind of players where if there is an injury, like people do trade for those pieces. Like I've seen it over and over again. So I don't mind rostering those pieces at all, not for the purpose of scoring points.
Yeah, I think you both provided really good feedback. So I'll just go a completely different direction. Just say that we are right now living in a world where you can get into some pretty solid starting quarterbacks for pretty cheap. So Tua Tagovailoa. Tunga?
Mm-hmm.
No. Tagovailoa. Where's the N?
This is how it's pronounced, bud.
Oh, all right, Tunga. He's at QB 25, equivalent to a early 26 second. Sam Darnold, QB 26. Geno Smith, QB 27 at a mid 26 second. Matt Stafford, mid 27 second at QB 28. These are all really viable starting quarterbacks for minimal costs. And like I would just much rather fill up my bench with those types of assets, or what Uriah said before, get into Russ, but also maybe try and get into Dart at the same time. Know that you have a solidified QB room, Darnold and Milrow, something like that, where it's the equivalent to the QB3, but it's extended. It has some extended value, and that you can now move those two pieces together for more value than not. AR and Daniel Jones was probably that option fucking 3 months ago, and it still probably looks pretty not wonderful, but there's probably someone in your league at some point during the regular season that will probably trade a first for both of those guys if you pair them together. So like that's kind of the way that I want to start thinking about my QB3. It's not necessarily what I think is the most valuable, but I think it's maybe the best way to fill in the roster spot as long as your benches are relatively large. Yeah, I keep having the hot dog conversation. Anyway.
All right, cool. Next question. Shout out to Jay from the Discord. How would you approach a league where you can only trade the upcoming year's picks? So only being able at this point in time, only being able to trade your 26 picks. And
you know this well. Console Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Console Wars.
Yes.
One, I think it's actually probably pretty good for most leagues to do this. It kind of prevents teams from selling a bunch of future picks and then missing the playoffs and then wrecking the league and leaving. So I'm not opposed to even, most leagues just allowing that. I still always can never wrap my head around when I see a trade and it's like for picks 2 years out. I'm like, what are we doing here? But it's really no different, man. For me personally, the way I played the game, it doesn't matter to me personally because typically I'm only looking for next year's picks, unless it's a trade where someone's sending me 2 years out, then I might consider it. But it doesn't change a whole lot for me. But you guys probably have more in-depth thoughts about this than I do.
I mean, I guess what I noticed mainly, and I guess this goes for two things, specifically for the quarterback position and then for high-end assets. I find that they obviously don't have less value, but there is less value to trade for. Like if I want to move a quarterback and I want multiple firsts, there's not that many people who have multiple firsts. Literally, you can't have multiple firsts off rip. Like, so you have to have traded for somebody else's or multiple other people's firsts to like have those assets, right? If I want to trade like a Jamar Chase or whatever it is, like it's either going to have to be very player driven or somebody who has collected those picks. And in console wars, fortunately, there's 36 teams, but in a normal league, there's only 11 other 11 other teams that you can, trade with. And so there's only 11 other picks available. That's it. There's 11, you know what I mean? Other than your own, there's 11 first round picks available. There's not next year's. There's not. So it almost devalues the players on your team because you literally can't often trade for the value that they possess. So that's one thing I noticed with the limit of trading future picks to 1 year. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The margin is so much smaller, I feel like, so that what we believe is a value spectrum just becomes significantly more tight because of the inability to actually acquire all of those higher end pick assets that we typically would. And we could see people packaging with other middle tier assets to then tier up into Josh Allen or something like that. We almost rarely see those types of quarterbacks get moved in that specific league. And that's with 35 firsts, right? Like that, or 35 other firsts available. I can't imagine what that looks like in a league with only 12 teams or even 10. What I would say is, for me personally, I think this is where you have to be really ruthless with the people that are in your leagues and know that the valuation gaps are going to be even more important with players. So I would almost use picks to kind of be only used as those like veteran upgrade pieces when I'm looking into the off season, knowing that there's going to be a lot of excitement around the ability to draft this one particular year because you're only interacting with the league in such annual processes. So that annual process is almost kind of providing the caveat that like, hey, this rookie draft, even though it happens annually in every other league, you only have picks for this year. So this is all you can enact on right now. You can't even look forward to next year yet. So instead, I would place even more value on that, trying to get into other veterans that are already in the league and hopefully take advantage of that. That being said, this is kind of where you have to take advantage of a lot of market valuation differentiations. So if there is any spaces for you to get into assets that, maybe are creeping up in KTC or your fantasy calc, whatever dynasty rankings you're using, use that to your advantage, because that's going to be where you're going to be able to gain as much value to your roster in windows. Taking advantage of injured players, I think, is going to be a really great use as well of your firsts. So God forbid a top 5 starting quarterback goes down, this is a really easy time to use that first and get into that asset, as long as it doesn't completely, destruct your contending opportunities, because that first feels like even more value to the league, knowing that there's less available, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I see it. I don't know if that's the most actionable advice, but that's how I would kind of move throughout the league personally.
Just because I'm only in one league like this and because we're in it together, but I think thinking about it now, I noticed that there's a lot of trades that get done in that league that you're like, how did that ever just happen? But then it goes back to what you're saying, where it's like, it almost tricks people. Like maybe it tricks me more than anything, because we're so used to having this giant set of assets where like people only see one pick available. So they'll trade like you're saying, an injured top end QB for one pick and a player, and you're like, dude, what? But to them, that's like the only thing they could do. You know what I mean? And truthfully, at some level, it is, unless you just wait it out and find somebody who has multiple picks and you get a good deal done. But like that's very few and far between. And when you do that, you pretty much have fleeced the other person because now they're stuck with an asset that they just gave up so many other assets for, and now they can't get. Nobody else has all those assets you just gave up. You had collected them. I'm talking about myself. I did this. This is me. Okay, so I know. So like, don't do that in these leagues. Like, you got to understand that if you spend a lot to get into one, it's going to be very difficult to dish off that one to get a lot back because not many people have a lot of shit. Like, that's just how it goes. So yeah, it definitely changes things quite a bit for me in terms of like what I'm willing to do and what is possible with certain assets. So yeah, that's a great question. Really good question.
Oh, shout out Jay. Another one here. So do you send out multiple offers to people? Two different offers for one player, the same manager. So basically you're looking to get Brian Thomas Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And so you send off an offer for, I don't know, Terry McLaurin and a first or something. But then you're like, okay, well, maybe, he doesn't really need that first. Like, so then you send off, Terry McLaurin and something else equivalent that will get you Brian Thomas Jr. just to let the manager know, hey, I'm really interested in getting Brian Thomas Jr. here. Honestly, I mean, the simple answer for me, I think people love options. If you just send them one thing that they're like totally uninterested in, they're just going to decline and move on. But if you kind of not pester, but like get the point across, but hey, I'm flexible, I think that could only lead to good things for you. So I don't see any problem with it. And I think it probably is a really good strategy to do.
Yeah, I don't do this too often, but I definitely do it. Like I can think of a time recently where I did something like this. And usually it's where I feel like I have some depth that I can package together to get something. And I have a couple different variations I'm willing to do. And like your eyes said, I think it lets them know you're like, you mean business, like you're willing to get something done here. So either accept one of these 2 or 3 offers I just sent you or send me something back. And if there's not a counter, you're like, why? What could possibly, you must not just like this player at all. So yeah, I definitely think it can be a useful strategy. I think it can be a viable strategy. I've definitely done it. I feel like I've had some experience from it, but I can't say I've had enough where like, I'm like, I do this every time, What about you, Jake? You ever try it?
No, never. I saw someone do it. This is actually my question. Someone did it in a different Discord. I reached out directly to that person and posted it like in the conversational chat just to see if that individual does it frequently. They said that it is something that they do frequently. And then a bunch of other folks jumped in and said that that's something that they do frequently. And I was just like, oh, it's really unique to think that this is a strategy that I always saw as potentially being off-putting to the other manager because I thought, like I had placed at the end, I always thought it was going to be like information overload, right? Like this is a situation where I'm now having to compare valuations of maybe multiple offers from one person. Am I going to think of the first offer as being a low ball and the second offer as being a high ball and like trying to find, the equilibrium between the two? Like, how does the other person foresee it? And I think what I learned, the answer to this was 1, I'm projecting, and 2, I am not really necessarily understanding my target audience. Like I'm not actually working better for the other manager. And I found it really helpful to learn more about this because I do think this will be a strategy that I use moving forward. So yeah.
Yeah, I would just suggest, if you're going to go about that strategy, send it 2 offers like within a minute or so. Like, don't send an offer for Brian Thomas Jr. to this manager, have it get rejected, and then send him a different offer for Brian Thomas Jr. and then get rejected. That's just straight up annoying.
Yeah.
That I mean, to me, is extremely annoying. So just if you're going to send the 2 offers or even 3 offers, do it rapid fire. Send them quick. That way they have the full slate of offers sitting in front of them, and then they could just go from there. That's going to be a whole lot less annoying.
I definitely think that there is something to that. Also, the kind of information overload can be a benefit sometimes, I think. I mean, it could be a negative because they could, just like decision paralysis and not want to do anything, but it could also be like, wow, this is a lot of choices. I probably should select one because they're good. The other thing I would say is that the offers you send, because to Jake's point, like you don't want to make them like start like really hard, evaluating it being complex. Like they should be similar valuations. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It should like the three offers should be similar in value, even though the players
Yes.
may be different combinations to get there. So it shouldn't be like Jake's saying, like one low ball, one like medium that you might accept, and one that's like, whatever it is. But like it shouldn't be like, because then they're going to be like, this is a little shady. Like what's going on here? It should more be like Uriah is saying. Also, I'm just sending out like a bunch of offers to you for this player right now. Like, go ahead and take a look at him. Is in good faith, or not. I'm not like, trying to get one over on you by sending you a good one now and a low ball later or something like that. So yeah, I do think that you need to kind of do it in a strategic way.
Cool. Next one we got shout out to Poetry and Lotion, which is an amazing name. Love that. How would you go about a league where two teams, neither are yours, or quarterback hoarding or do the quarterback X? So only effectively 22 starting running backs or quarterbacks are left of the other 10 teams. How would you go about that? Well, I would say at first, I mean, you let it get this way from the startup. You saw Team A or Team B are gathering the quarterbacks, and this is the situation you're going to find yourself in. But at that point, like, there's going to be a point, I believe, probably for these guys in the QBX world, depending on the size of the rosters and size of the bench, where they're going to need to move one of those quarterbacks. And it will fall on them to where they are going to end up having to trade one of those quarterbacks for probably a little bit less than they normally would get. But, I mean, you just got to roll with the punches, man. I mean, it's strategy. It's the same for, like, anything. What if somebody's hoarding, like Jake has, like, 4 or 5 of the top Dynasty wide receivers in one of our leagues, and really nothing you can do about it, man. It's just kind of where it is. I think it's one of those things that unless you're taking over an orphan, that's something that you need to kind of pay attention to on the draft board and kind of see is happening, and try your best to not end up in a situation where you're only left with 2.2 quarterbacks per team in the rest of the league.
I feel like as a general topic, we've talked about this a few times. Not exactly this, but generally, like you can pivot to, a different position, obviously, to, if somebody's hoarding the QBs, you can pivot to tight end or whatever it may be, right? Like that's definitely viable. But I'm wondering, I actually had this question in the back of my mind. So I kind of, jump off of this one with it, but I wonder, like, if you guys think that QB minimalist is kind of, that's not anything I've ever heard, but I'm just kind of making it up. QB minimalist is a viable strategy in this situation, right? Because I do feel like I've had quite a few teams that have been successful where I just have two really solid starters, like a Russell Wilson backup or whatever it may be, like that kind of backup. And not really to like fill in or anything. That's just kind of how my team was constructed, more as a trade piece, those kind of things, whatever it is. But basically where I have two starting QBs, right? And I fill in my flex most of the time with either like a wide receiver or something, like I'm at my super flex on a bye with a wide receiver, running back, whatever it is, tight end. Zero QB strategy, says Joe. Yeah. Something like that, but not really like that. More like, a Baker Mayfield and a Jordan Love or something. No, that's not like nothing, but it is pretty minimal. Like if that's all you have, you know what I mean? And then you just kind of stack up everywhere else. And I'm wondering if you guys think that in that situation, it's a good strategy. I feel like it could possibly be, because it allows you to be super balanced at the other positions, but also add potentially some depth at the top, like a couple top 5 starters at, wide receiver and tight end or something like that, where you have like, a good balance of really high-end talent or high-end scorers on your team, giving up some of the value that you would put into a QB 3 or 4 or whatever it may be, or even your QB 2, So I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Jake, I think you can jump in. We've talked quite.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be very league dependent. So doing that in a league with someone that is running QBX will have to be incredibly efficient. So to this person's question, I do think that there is value there. I think that the real value would be if you are able to get into any remaining QBs. I know in an ideal QBX strategy, you're talking about potentially the top 10 quarterbacks are now gone off the board. Um, my hope would be trying to get into whoever is at the top of that next tier, seeing what their trajectory will look like. So I'm talking about probably someone right now would be like CJ Stroud, who is outside of that cusp and hoping that they would get back in. Brock Purdy is probably another guy like that, maybe trying to get ahead of the curve with with JJ McCarthy. Those types of assets is kind of how I see myself feeding into the QB, while also then, to Billy's point, basically trying to be as efficient and elite as possible in the other positions. Like me personally, depending on what the actual scoring settings are, assuming that they're relatively chalk, but it's full PPR, I'm still finding a way to get into knowing that the other two builds can't into elite wide receivers. I do believe in the majority of their consistent scoring. And when I say elite, I mean like literally the top 5. And then from there, I'm probably trying to get into one of the top 3 tight ends, if not 2 of them. And then at running back, I'm trying to get into probably 2 of the top 10 running backs. I think with that type of construction, you're going to find yourself at bare minimum competing with them on a week-to-week basis. And now you're really just playing the unfortunate coin flip game on who's going to end up scoring. They are running QBX, so that means that they have to be making the most efficient decisions at quarterback as well, knowing that, yes, their points per game are going to be higher, but even their mistakes will have massive consequences. Running a quote-unquote, as Lefty Joe said, 0 QB situation does give you less roster conflicts when you are making those week-to-week decisions, so that does have some slight benefit. But if the differentiation between those 2 quarterbacks and the other 2 teams' quarterbacks are 12 to 15 points per week or per game, that's massive, right? So how do you make up that gap, I think, is kind of going the direction that I said. And it's challenging. Like, I don't think that this is one of those situations where if there's multiple QBX teams in your league, like the market's going to be fucked. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, this is going to be a really challenging league to maneuver through. But I think more importantly, it's about how you maneuver through it. And it's like I was saying, trying to figure out the QB values that feel like they're in an opportunity to acquire. That's where I would want to get into, knowing that they have an opportunity to get into that next tier because of either projection, growth, new coaching, whatever it might be. That's kind of the direction that I would want to lean into.
Cool. I love how I was like, well, just deal with it. This is the way you drafted. And these guys are all like, well, here's the situation, and this is what I would do. Love you guys.
So before we move, this isn't nobody I think in this league is doing a QBX strategy. I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but in League of Legends, I kind of built a roster that way, right? Where I had, so again, the quarterbacks are Love and Mayfield, and again, value wise, those were pretty low, not low value QBs, but very, very affordable value QBs, kind of what you're talking about. If somebody's going QBX, those are going to be if you're going to get a top end one, Love is kind of the top of that or one in that range. You know what I mean? And Baker was kind of low valued last year, much less than he was now. But basically the way the roster is Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. I got into Kittle, Hawkinson, right? Those 2, and I lucked into Jonnu Smith, which helped out a lot last year. And then I actually went 0 running back. I went 0 running back in that league and snagged one for a second, which ended up being James Conner or something later in the year. But I think that's how you're going to have to approach it. And I wasn't even that efficient. I could have been a lot more efficient. I ended up making the finals and losing in that league, but I could have been a lot more efficient. I actually made some bad trades, I think, off McLaurin and some picks for Tank Dell and some stuff. And so if I made even some better decisions, it could have looked a lot better than it even did. But I think that's the kind of build you're going to have to kind of get to, where you have multiple position groups where you have an advantage over your opponent almost every single week, right? Where you're not relying on QB essentially to kind of carry you, and you can fight against their QB points and that positional value they hold. So yeah, okay, before we move on here, sorry, real quick, I know we want to keep going, just want to throw this one in here, and I think I agree with this for sure, but from Lapisaurus, knowing QBX strategies also try to focus on the top end tight ends. Would you benefit from trying to acquire those before they're able to corner that market, making their strategy less effective? 100%.
100%.
I would say that's definitely what we're saying here. 100%. Lap, going back to our last question, I do want to throw this out there. Do actions speak louder than words in this situation? Would you, and we're talking about sending multiple trade offers for the same player. Would you be more interested if they sent multiple trade offers over no offer and receive a message saying they're interested and willing to negotiate? Personally, I'm probably going to be more interested if I get offers than if somebody just says something to me. Like, I've always said this, like, I'm going to be a little evasive if you're just asking me like my values and questions and stuff. It just seems like you're trying to get something out of me instead of doing the work of sending an offer. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to have to do any of the work for you necessarily in that situation. I think I need you to do the work. And then because you may do something that I think is a great benefit to me, whereas if I send something to you, I may completely miss on that. You know what I mean? Or if I send you just my thoughts or something like that. So you're always going to get more, I think, or even a conversation started from sending an offer. So,
yeah. One of the worst things for me was receiving like that. Hey, are you interested in anybody in my roster? It's like, I feel like if I was, I probably would have sent you an offer form already, or at the time, right? You know,
sure.
It's all good. All right, cool. So shout out to Buttlicker Extraordinary again. It says, can you give a critical review of common roster builds in Dynasty? Okay, so common roster builds. He's talking about the Hero Zero running back. Is it becoming easier to find value at running back compared to years past? And then the bully tight end. I guess pros and cons in your guys' opinions.
I'll jump in real quick on the Hero Zero because I typically do that shit a lot and try to take it to an extreme. I think I came up with like the extreme zero RB strategy where you wait till the double-digit rounds and really just enjoy the pain. But yeah, I think it's easier for sure. I think people have faded the older running backs, sometimes justifiably, but I think in general as a whole, they started fading them earlier than maybe we should, given kind of just sports science. And like these guys do last a little bit longer than they used to. And those, you know, that age cliff is a little bit later than it used to be. And, you know, guys like Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, like all these guys have just been, you know, you can get some of them in your dynasty drafts in, again, the double-digit round areas. Also, you can just completely fade it out and then trade a second-round pick later in the season when you know you're a contender, like I was just talking about on that other roster, right? And so I think that there's a lot of ways to get into aging running backs. I don't know if that's different than, you know, a decade ago or whatever it is. I imagine that it might be the same. It's just not a strategy that like I think people like being secure and having a running back, you know, like a stud running back to start every week, and they don't like going through the year with Jaleel McLaughlin starting at the running back position half the year until they get right at the running back position because of an injury somewhere and they get, you know, a handcuff on their roster to fill in, or like I said, you go and trade for one later in the year, a couple thirds, a second, whatever it is for an old guy, and now you fill it in. So it's not a comfortable position to be in all the time, but it's definitely a super viable strategy. Do you want me to hit on tight end bully too?
Sure.
Because I certainly can.
I don't have anything to add for the zero running back. I think you nailed it. So.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly say on the tight end thing, I always, you'll see almost all of my builds, I try to somehow get into Kittle and Hawkinson or Mark Andrews and Kittle or so whatever it is, some combination of these tight ends where and it's almost always the one that's a value. You know what I mean? I'm trying to find the guy who's going to get into the top 3, 4, 5 or whatever, who is in round 8, a la George Kittle. This year, Mark Andrews seems to, it's the cycle of Mark Andrews. We're doing it all over again, you know? And so I'm trying to find my way into those kind of guys, late round Travis Kelce's, stuff like that. I haven't found my way into the young guys as much lately. They're just so highly valued. I think I may have got a Trey McBride share recently. It was like my first time getting one of those. So those are going to be more difficult, but I'm always looking for the value that can kind of creep into the top 5. That's what I'm looking for there. Values, 2 of them. Jake, what are your thoughts on those 2 things?
Yeah. So for heroes, you're running back. I think like the most critical review I can say for it is just making sure that the rest of your builds is building from the top. So trying to get into those, like if I'm going to go hero 0 RB, like I want to make sure that the rest of my build fits that accordingly. And sometimes that isn't the case. So I just want to make sure that when I'm interacting with teams, I'm taking full advantage over my rest of the teams that I'm going up against. I think for tight end bully, though, even more so, it's about trying to interact into those individual premiums accordingly. Like, I don't know if there's necessarily as much of an advantage of going pure tight end bully when you have, like a 0.5 premium versus 0.7 or even 1 point premium. So those are just things that I want to kind of decide on before I'm moving forward with them. But outside of that, like, I am weirdly not that critical of individual builds. I think it's really just down to the owner and making sure they're moving through the market in the most efficient ways possible. You're going to win, you're going to lose some trades, but it's like, how do I move through the lineup to ensure that, starting 11, starting 10, starting 9, whatever you're playing in is a viable option on a week-to-week basis. So if you are going hero 0 running back, but you still don't have a viable, flex 4 or flex 5 starter, it means fuck all to me, right? like that's really what it comes down to. So it's not really about the build itself. It's about how do I maximize from that build type and make sure that the value is placed in the right positions outside of that.
No, I absolutely agree. You have to supplement for whatever you're giving up. You have to properly supplement, and it has to not only fill out the entire roster, but you have to almost have depth on top of that you've kind of backfilled to make sure that you're getting the points that you're not getting from the running back position, in this case, you're a running back or whatever. You're getting that at least from, your 4th flex spot or whatever. You have to make sure that you're getting that plus almost sometimes, right? To cover or that your QB1 is like fucking Josh Allen or something and is going to cover your point, is going to be your running back and your quarterback, whatever it is. Like that's the idea. You have to make sure that you're properly covering those gaps. And so the entire, like if I'm drafting a 0 or hero running back team, I find myself in that position. I'm like, all right, well, like everything's got to be, like you're saying, efficient pretty much. And they have to be fucking awesome. Like every pick has to be awesome. And I need to find the values. And that's why I'm always kind of in a draft being the value hawk. Like where can I find the value that's falling to me in the 8th, 9th, 10th round or whatever, because that's going to make up the difference that I'm kind of, giving up to do this whole thing. So that's the idea.
Cool. All right. Next question from Samuel R. Shout out. He's talking about the Dynasty Underdog Listener Leagues have an abundance of flex options, much like the Scott Fish Bowl. All the leagues that Billy has put together for us and Jake and myself are pretty much flex everything. And the question is, like, how does this change your build? How does this change your team compared to a more rigid roster requirements? And has this made a unique roster successful or unsuccessful for you? It's a good question. I mean, I like to think that it really makes one, like, building your team a lot more fun. Like it's like I said before, it's like, choose your fighter. Like you don't have to be constrained by somebody who's going to hoard running backs or someone who's going to hoard all the top wide receivers. Like you could literally go and get whatever you want because you're not worried about having to start 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs every single week, no matter what. You could just kind of go off the wall, go whichever way you want. And I also do think that it helps with trading. you're more likely to trade away like your second best running back, knowing you only need to start one. And that could be very beneficial later on the line, especially if you're trying to sell off before the trade deadline or even acquire those types of players, because people aren't so beholden to like, I need 3 starting this, I need 2 starting this. Like there's a lot more freedom, I think, with everybody. I just think it's more fun. I don't know about like strategy wise if it really changes a whole lot for me. I just think it really just gives me more freedom to draft the players I want and not worry about a running back run or a tight end run or something like that. Like I just think it gives you a lot more freedom.
Yeah, I think you see that too in the warp curves. So whenever you look at the warp curves of the DU leagues, positions basically flatten out. In the traditional ones, especially before DU5, which is our newest iteration or our startup this year, like QBs definitely had the most value, and Billy found a way to basically almost remove all of their premiums. So you're now sitting there almost deciding whether or not you need to start a quarterback at your 10th starting position, right? Like your super flex spot now is in a very unique and almost precarious situation versus traditional roster constraints in normal leagues. I would say, to also Uriah's point, like it does allow for a little bit more creativity. Like you can attack the roster construction a little bit in a little bit different way. I also find that you can now also impact liquidity in a completely different way. I think liquidity in normal roster constructions is almost super dependent on draft picks. I think draft picks are super important when you're trying to think of, how I'm going to fill out my starting lineup. If I want to put in, let's say, a viable RB2, but I don't want to impact my future, I'm typically using it second, right? Now, the differentiation here is that I can now use future first, knowing that the players that I'm using in those positions, typically, if I'm doing it at the rate that I want to be doing it, I'm not saying go spend a first on Derrick Henry. I'm saying go spend a first on, maybe someone like Jonathan Taylor, or someone where the value is slightly deflated, and you can get into a premium asset that is going to score you very similar, have an elongated window of value, and then be able to get out of, I find to be the better path when you're talking about these flexible lineup constructions. So personally, I see the multiple flex options as almost a litmus test for myself to how can I use all of these options in the most fun and almost evasive ways as I can, because what I want to be doing is presenting my team to the rest of the league in some way, but then actually try and do something different throughout the season, because what I'm trying to gain from my league mates in June or July versus what I'm trying to gain from my league mates in December is going to be 2 completely different things. These types of roster constructions have way more flexibility, and I think the best way to move about.
Yeah, it's great stuff. When I first saw this roster setup, it was my first Dynasty League. It was Console Wars, and I guess I was converted immediately, but it was like very liberating, right? Like you get into it and you're like, oh my goodness, there's so much that I can do here. And I know the complaint or the thought has come across, especially in the Discord in the past. It's like, doesn't this hinder trading? Because it doesn't, you're not forced to go trade for a running back or whatever, because you need a running back too, and you need to fill that spot. And it's like, no, this does not limit trading, hinder trading. This opens things up. You can, if you want to go trade for 2 tight ends, or you want to go trade for 4 running backs, you can fucking start all of them. You can do whatever you want, start them all. You know what I mean? So it's like, it really opens things up a little bit. And we've never had a single issue with trading in any of our leagues. So I would never suggest that is a downside to that setup. So yeah, I mean, I think it's allowed me to make super unique roster builds. It's allowed me to focus on tight ends in certain scenarios. It's allowed me to focus on build an entire team out of wide receivers, right? Like just top end wide receivers, 1 running back, like 1 very, whatever. And then over time, you get a stud through a rookie draft or whatever it is, or you figure it out and now you have like a super team almost. It kind of allows you to build things out in a much more flexible way. And it allows you in drafts, especially to kind of flow with the board, right? Like whatever the league is doing, you don't need to be, I need a wide receiver and I need a running. No, you really don't. You don't really need anything. You just need the best player available. You need the best thing for this roster. Or again, if people are going in a direction, hoarding QBs, hoarding, right, whatever it is, you can completely go the opposite way and still put out a really, really competitive roster. You know what I mean? You're not going to be stuck with a bunch of guys on your bench who you can't put in the lineup. So I really, really enjoy that about those leagues. Obviously, if I'm drafting or if I'm playing in a league where I have to start 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, that kind of thing or whatever, it's going to completely change how I do things for sure. I mean, I still might I'll go hero running back probably more than I'll ever go zero running back because I want to at least have one, but then I'll my zero running back becomes my second running back position that I don't give a shit about. And I just kind of try to fill everything. So it just kind of, I can modify it slightly given the league and change things like that. But yeah, it certainly changes things. But I don't think I've ever had a problem in more rigid leagues. You just kind of have to adjust for it,
Cool. All right. That's the end of the mailbag section. Here, I believe Jake got us a list. Forgive me because I cannot actually see this picture very well. No old jokes. It just literally
it's small.
I could make this at 200, and I got it. So it's 44 through 50-ish.
It's supposed to be 50 onward. I feel like I framed it incorrectly.
Should I just pull up keep trade cut?
Yeah, just pull up keep trade cut and just show.
Is it rookie rankings? Is it rookies?
It's just the rookie rankings. Yep.
So it looks like rankings 44 through 65. And as Billy's gonna pull that up, the question is basically which rookie do we think outside the top 50 is most likely to produce usable starts in 2025? Which is a good question because likely at least one of them probably will.
Yes, and this was actually a mailbag question from Jay, so shout out Jay.
Excellent.
I think I'm getting this right. Okay, so let's go. Am I tripping?
Oh, yeah, you're just. Yeah, you're on rookie rankings. Keep scrolling down. Maybe it just didn't load.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened. Okay, good. Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll start there and leave it right about there. Okay. Take us through it.
Yeah, I think it's really just dependent on the players that you see, the players that you see on the list. Which rookies, like you said, outside the top 50. So folks,
sorry, I didn't hear anything.
Tunnel vision there, trying to find the page. Yes. No worries. Is likely to produce usable starts in 2025. I'll provide my shouts. Okay. I have 2, which is probably already unfair, but I think there are 2 in that group. I have Woody Marks, who's at 51. I think that's very much down to. I think that's very much just down to the running back room not knowing how healthy Joe Mixon is. I know that there have been reports saying that he is relatively healthy. Yes, they brought in Nick Chubb. I'm fully aware of the setup. I just think that if you're playing in probably full PPR leagues, Woody Marks has a viability there as having usable starts. The second one is also down to a relatively thin running back room. And I know that this is going to tickle Uriah's pickle, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. I think that we're talking about realistically a singular injury to Brian Robinson, and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt has a role that is probably startable for your fantasy teams, especially in like a best ball format. So those would be the 2.
Okay. Those are solid. I think Taj Brooks, I'll throw out there. I think he could potentially have.
He's in 46.
Well, what did we say? Oh, outside the top 50. I thought I heard him say 44. Okay, fine. I'll give you another one. Savion Williams, I think, is one I would throw out there. More of a dark horse option, but I do think that he could see touches out of the backfield, so he could meaningfully get in the lineup that way, but also he could just be a dual threat. So if he turns out to be better than expected from a receiving standpoint, which I think I've always been maybe one of those proponents where I'm like, I don't think he's that bad as a receiver, guys. But I guess when I say that, what I mean is I think he has legit dual threat ability. I don't think it's just like he has to play running back. So I think that there's some viability there potentially. So that would be the main one I had. The other one I want to say, like, I don't know if I believe it as much as I want to say it, would be Damian Martinez, because I like him so much as a player. And all it would take is, I think, an injury to Ken Walker for him and Sharps to be kind of sharing the backfield, essentially. So that's the way that he would get in there. It's very injury dependent. So that contingent upside, I think, might be there. But I do like him quite a bit. And I don't hate the situation as much as everybody else probably does. Anything from you here?
I just got a second Corey Krosky Merritt, JCM. I mean,
sure.
Money where my mouth is, but honestly, just all the factors of what's actually in front of him, it just really stands out to me that this is, and he's a pretty good player. And then another one, this is both those Tennessee wide receivers, Restrepo and DK. I think either of those guys could probably move up. Somebody's there is gonna. I think the offense is going to be better than it has been in years past, and I think that probably one of those guys could possibly end up moving up. And then Dark Horse is a good one. Shout out Dallas Cowboys, but Phil Maffa.
Yes, good one.
It's just his build and what. I mean, right now we have Sanders, we have Javonte Williams, they drafted Jaden Blue, but they don't have someone built quite like Phil Maffa, and the two vets in front of everybody else have their issues and lack of efficiencies. There is a path forward for Phil Maffa to end up being ranked within the top 50 a year from now, easily.
Yeah, definitely think those are good. Yeah, I definitely think those are really good shouts. There was another one that I saw on here that I wanted to throw out there. Efton Chisholm at 74. I think he actually might have more of a chance than half of the guys we talked about. But so he's one I would throw out there who's way down the ranks. And I think maybe Phil Maffa was the other one I was looking at that you took. But I do think, what I did want to say is I think it's crazy that Restrepo is ranked higher than DK. That's kind of crazy to me. Just given, one didn't get drafted, the other got drafted. We talked about this
like a few weeks back, didn't we? I think Jake was out, but
it was more. I think it was more about the other wide receiver. Who's the other guy? No, the other guy that got drafted. It was Ayo Manor and DK. Right. Yeah. We didn't really talk about Restrepo, but Restrepo being up there is very surprising to me. Those are good chats though. I like those. That was a fun segment.
Cool. And we will finish off with a couple trades here. We have from Dynasty Underdog Listener League number 4, J.K. Dobbins for 27 second.
This was my trade, so Jake, if you want to hop in there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was giving the floor to Uriah, but I'll take the second. I think this is like one of those where it's super roster dependent. I totally can see wanting to get into Dobbins at that cost, but knowing that I'm getting into Dobbins at that cost, knowing that I probably won't get a profit off of him just really hurts. So I just don't really know what I'm doing there. I also don't know how viable of a starter he'll be throughout the entire season. So God forbid I make the playoffs, Dobbins is my starting running back or one of my starting running backs. Like, I now am paying a second and then probably also needing some insurance on top of it is kind of the way that I see it. So this is just not how I'd want to be using my second.
Yeah, the person that received Dobbins also has RJ Harvey. So I don't know if that really helps. I mean, again, I don't think it's bad to own your own handcuff. I don't think that there's really a problem with that. Like, I just don't know if I would have gone at it with this cost. This was initial offer, to me. I would have probably, if I was the other person, I would have probably sent like a couple thirds or a third and something, try to get Dobbins off of me just to like mitigate the risk, right? Because I think, like Jake is saying, you could just blow a second here, you know? So for me, my team is competing, but I figured like I do this on competing rosters often when, and again, this deal isn't always there, but when I have some depth and it's like aging out or there's maybe some injury risk or whatever, I'm just trying to churn out of it into future picks because I just feel like they're more liquid and my roster can handle it. And what that does is it basically builds like almost like a little farm system on your own team. You know, that's what you try to do is like just constantly keep things flowing back into youth back into your roster. And so that was the idea for me. But
yeah. I think it's fine. Like I think the trade is fair and the context behind it makes a lot of sense. I think sending a 27-second for J.K. Dobbins is worth it if you're rostering R.J. Harvey as well. We don't know exactly what's going to go on there. I think it's fine. 26-second would be too much, in my opinion. So other than that, yeah, pretty good. DU4, Chuba Hubbard. Man, I still every time I think about him, this is totally off the rails, but he totally face planted his rookie year. And it was like dead to the world. And then ever since then he's actually been pretty solid for fantasy. And that doesn't happen very often with running backs. But that said, Chuba Hubbard was sold for a 27-second, third, and fourth.
I just want to jump off of your eyes comment there and say I actually, you know, I've been playing Devi for a while and I remember Hubbard being a Devi darling. Like he was top 3 running back for sure in his class, and he went on to get severely injured. I think he suffered a really significant knee injury, and I think that that you know pushed him to come back to school, have a down year, and then everybody just was like, "This guy sucks. Like I don't want him. I don't care about his pedigree. I don't care about nothing." And I always found that so interesting. And I don't have like a ton of Hubbard shares or anything. I just to comment on the player in general. Like I think there's a lot of pedigree there, a lot of talent there that got disregarded because of an injury and a bad final season in college. And so I think that kind of like seeped into the NFL with usage and everything like that. And finally when he got a shot, yeah. But this deal, sorry, just coming back to this deal, Hubbard for 27-second, third, and fourth, I think is so low. I was so shocked. I would have sent easily 2 seconds for Hubbard, I think, just because you're going to probably be able to get maybe a first back in season, but as a competitor, like he's probably going to offer a pretty solid year of points for you. So I just think that's like, I mean, maybe it's at like right at like value or something, his real value, but I feel like his market value is higher than that. So I was just really shocked to see this deal get done without another second or something like that. That said, I do know this manager has been trying to move Hubbard since like last year. And he was like trying to pass him off to me for a first in the playoffs, and I just wouldn't do it. But so maybe this is what he thought was the best deal he could get. Yeah, thoughts, Jake?
Yeah, this is just selling too low for me given the circumstance in Carolina. I think it was Uriah relatively early on last year when things were not super beautiful in Carolina. Started seeing some of the glimmers, the shimmers of hope. And I do think that by the end of the season, like that Carolina offense, I wouldn't say was terrifying, but was operating in a significantly more progressive manner. That being said, I do think that Chuba Hubbard is one of those assets where he has a very clearly defined role in 2025, and he will be the RB1 on that team. So it's like, I know that the person selling here is definitely rebuilding. I just think that this is how you rebuild in the most inefficient way possible. Like if you just wait the extra period of time, sell in the right windows, you get a first and you feel significantly better about owning Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, that's just my advice to this like specific trade. I think like in general, this is probably just like on the lower end of market value when you like stack all the picks together and plug it into a calculator. But yeah, it's still something I don't want to do. The only other thing I did want to just quickly say is that I really do love your feedback about Chuba Hubbard. And it does remind me a little bit about 2 running backs that are rookies this year that I honestly have like 0 shares of. But one of them is Raheem Sanders out of Arkansas. Devi Darling, absolutely loved, got injured, looked absolutely fucking terrible his last year before he got into the NFL draft this year, and really paid a pretty sharp consequence to it. And the other one would be Devin Neal, who very similarly had a very similar pathway, injury getting in the way there, staying the extra year. Honestly, statistically had a pretty good senior year, but it didn't have a massive injury like Hubbard did. And then last one would be Ollie Gordon. I really just don't understand what happened to him year 3 or year 4 in college. Also from Oklahoma State, just like Hubbard. So I guess all of those Devi Darlings have opportunities in their new setups, but just what you were saying resonated with me, because I do think that we live in such short windows sometimes where the narratives on these guys change so quickly. And yeah, like Hubbard had a very slow start to his career where he was a backup for 2 seasons, and then given opportunity last year given opportunity at the end of the 2023 season, was given some starter chops, and then because of opportunity last year ended up being the actual starter because unfortunately Miles Sanders kind of went AWOL and had some mental health issues. So, things occur for some of these guys and they end up turning around their careers. So just something to be mindful of is that sometimes the pedigree is long-standing.
Yeah, and I would say for Raheem Sanders and Devin Neal, it's more true than Ollie Gordon, just the level of prospect, at least just kind of thinking about how they were viewed by the Devi community and like where they were at. Like without the injury, Raheem Sanders was like talked about as like a running back 2 or 3 in a class, like these are top end athletes, players that, and that's a guy, it's a great one that I don't have on my roster either. And Chuba's another one who I probably didn't have enough on my roster, even knowing all that. He was somebody who I do have a couple shares of and benefited from just kind of, sticking with it. But it's not, these guys, it's always situational. The context is super important with those things. Like it's super, super important to understand like where they came from and why they may not be getting the opportunity early. And then understanding that, every situation is different. Chuba happened to be in a situation that lent itself to somebody coming back from something, because Jonathan Brooks, Miles Sanders, they just didn't work out. None of it worked out. And he was just the one left healthy and also had the talent. So yeah, super, super interesting stuff there. I feel like this is the last thing I wanted to say on this. Sorry, before we move, is just looking at keep trade cut, Chuba Hubbard, value adjacent running backs, James Cook, RJ Harvey, Quinshawn Judkins. Those are the 3 ahead of him. Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, the ones behind him. He's sitting at RB21. And then value adjacent players overall, talking about Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall, under him, Jackson Dart, Justin Fields, Luther Burden. I'm a big fan of everybody who's in our dynasty leagues and everything, and I don't want to throw any shit on anybody, but like this one missed the mark. Like there was a lot of value left on the table on this one. So I think it was a little bit of what Jake was saying, being impatient and just wanting to get out of an asset that has been really hard to get out of. I advise stick with it every time. You will get out of that asset. Like with these, again, if you're talking about like a low end guy who, whatever, this is like a very solid asset. He's going to score points. He's going to have a role. You will have a better window to get out of him. So I advise a lot of the time when you get into that situation, you're like, I just want to get out of this guy for anything. Fight the urge, because there's a better window for it. So that's my final thoughts on it.
Cool. Yeah, you guys kind of nailed it. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I appreciate the Discord. Came through with the heat on the questions. Thank you, Jake, for soliciting those. Really, really fun time. Appreciate you all. If you're not in the Discord, I did start including the Discord link in every show description. So you can find us there and hop in. Yeah, that's all I got, though. Appreciate it. Really fun time tonight, guys.
Cool. With that, follow these guys on the socials and join the Discord. Other than that, have a good night.
Peace out, fam.